Hello and welcome back. We left off at Chapter 3, and so we're going to begin again. Chapter 3, The Valley of the Lost. Who are you? What do you want? The girl snapped. Her eyes glanced around to see if anyone else was lurking about. He noticed her eyes were as golden as her hair. Even dirty and soaking wet, he could tell she had to be from the city. She looked too manicured and fake. People from the other towns in the area were trusting and open. She was not. Town folks didn't go stomping through the forest as the girl did. Why would a chit like her be in a place like this? The boy was taking too long to answer. Growing nervous, she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Crawling onto a root above the water, she steadied herself. Answer me, she commanded. The water flowing through her system was beginning to give her strength. She was too weak to make a run for it. Not that she'd even know where she was going. Even by the river, the penetrating darkness of the forest seemed endless. Perhaps if you answer me first, miss. Although he was teasing her, his curiosity was growing. She seemed to be getting used to what she wanted. What a high-class city girl was doing out here confused him. People didn't go sightseeing this far out. What are you doing way out here? Having a leisurely stroll, she sarcastically retorted. Where am I? The sincerity of her plea gave him pause. He decided to answer her. There's no reason not to reply. Outside the farthest town north in the Valley of the Lost. It's called Parathnon. I answered your question. Now, if you wouldn't mind answering mine. Sorry. My name is Sorry. She waited for him to recognize the name. If he did, perhaps he would help. If he didn't, perhaps he would help. Corbin, he replied. You're from the city? Good, she thought. Corbin didn't know who she was. Yes, quickly. She thought of a lie. My cousin. He lives in the mountains past the valley. I was trying to visit him when my transportation failed. That seemed reasonable. If Corbin could get her to the mountains, perhaps she could find sanctuary. No one lives in the mountains except for monks. He was skeptical. No one from the city chose a life as a monk by choice. The mountains are one of the last places untouched by man. Not even he can imagine the horrors that live there. Yes, Sorry quickly exclaimed. He's a monk. If you would tell me how to get there, I'd be so very grateful. Corbin sighed. It would be much easier to leave her. Sorry wasn't his problem. Perhaps if he went to town, he could call her transport. Sure, town is right here. I can call you something to take you. No, Sorry said abruptly. There could be people looking for her in town. She was digging herself deep in the lie. This wasn't a good idea. Even being this close was dangerous. She calmed her breathing. Sorry, just point the way. I don't want to be a bother. Something was wrong. Corbin knew he should do the moral thing and help her. Sorry did seem to be in some sort of trouble. Start of the mountains was not that far by boat. Could be there and back by dinner time. Never in all her life had Sorry begged. Pleading with Corbin was detestable. She hoped it would not come to that. Her freedom was in his hands. If you agree to be honest, I can take you to the start of the mountains. Thank you. Sorry had never been more grateful, even if it meant finding a more convincing lie. Chapter 4. The Volcano's River. The river was swelled from the last monsoon of the season. High water meant less maneuvering around tree limbs. He hoped to engage Sorry in conversation. Stating she was odd was an understatement. Sorry walked with an air of confidence, but was constantly stumbling in the brush. To be this far into the forest took bravery. She was impressive. Yet Corbin knew better than to befriend an outsider. His father constantly reminded his sister and him of the dangers strangers posed. Yet his father died far from the comfort of his home in Rathnon. Months had passed since he used his father's old fishing boat. Brush had already grown over the boat. Luckily, it was still in working order. Sorry could barely believe it could float. It looked more like a stick with a motor on it than a boat. Beggars can't be choosers, she thought as she eased herself aboard. Corbin gripped her elbow to steady her. Thank you, she replied. For a jungle savage, he was polite. No problem. Wouldn't want you falling in the river. I can't imagine your cousin would be very happy with guessed soaking wet. He noted she was confused for a moment when he mentioned her cousin. Checking the motor, he wondered if anything she told him was the truth. Sorry jumped in the motor, roared to life. Careful, this old girl might be a little loud, but she'll get you to where you want. He was trying to make her feel at ease, but it was the first time she felt bad taking advantage of him. The least she could do was be courteous. Sorry, I've never been a fan of water. Never was a strong swimmer. She's a beautiful boat. Where did you get it? I inherited her from when my dad passed. He paused, held him in thought. Sorry for your loss. I also lost my parents, but it was a long time ago. Do you have any other family? I have a little sister and a mother. They are more than enough. The entire village is close. It's sort of like an extended family. I could have showed you if you had more time. You would have liked it. It sounds wonderful. She imagined what it would have been like for Corbin growing up, trusting everyone, playing with whomever he wanted, having a real family. He was lucky. Perhaps one day she'd live in a place like that. The closer Sari got to its freedom, the more her dreams expanded. She could live however she wanted. No one would tell her what to say or what to do. As free as a bird she'd fly. What about you? Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Corbin didn't question her somber look on her face. He knew he recognized the feeling. Do you have any family? Brothers, sisters, aunts? No, just me. Sari caught herself. And my cousin, of course. Oh yes, that interesting cousin you told me so much about. She knew he was teasing. Sari decided to take a bold move and say nothing. That sounded like something someone telling the truth would do. Instead, Sari rolled her eyes. The river was widening enough to see the peaks above the trees. How the mountains were monstrous. She had never been so close. Her throat felt dry. How was she going to live way up there? Are you okay? Corbin asked. He sensed Sari's hesitation. We can always head back. We'll come back tomorrow and you can think this through. I'm fine. How much longer until we are at the mountains? The river splits up ahead. Then it will start to increase altitudes faster. After a few miles, the boat can't fight the current. You'll have to walk the rest of the way to the monastery. Just get me as close to the monastery. You got to the monastery. I promise I'll get you to the monastery. Get you to your cousin, probably. Sari wondered if he understood what he was promising. Chapter 5. End of a short journey. Sari enjoyed the trip upriver. Corbin was an enthusiastic host. He pointed out wildlife that she would have never noticed. Sari sat basking in the sunlight reflected off the water. Corbin had been quiet a while. Is everything okay? Sari asked, looking at his concerned face. Corbin had overcompensated the time. They wouldn't reach the mountains by dark. Nothing to worry about. Just need to pick up speed. Can still get us there by dark, right? It's not the dark I'm worried about. Sari chuckled at his remark. Her friends were correct. Townfolk are cowards. I had been in these woods for days. The only thing that worried me was the bugs. She was far too ignorant. Sari could use a reality check, he decided. Number 1, we are by a water source. That brings animal traffic. Number 2, we are at the edge of the mountains. That means big, dangerous animals. Only by some dumb luck were you not attacked by lizards. I've seen lizards in the zoos. They're not scary, she chided. Actually, they're sort of cute. Whatever Corbin thought of her, Sari needed him to think of her as brave. Sure, they're cute, ripping you apart and eating you while you're still screaming. I thought people who lived in the forest weren't afraid of anything. How about I get you to the mountains and then you can decide what scares you? Little did Corbin know, Sari had plenty of reasons to be scared. There were worse things than death. The sun had fell behind the trees long ago. White rapids in the speeding river caused Corbin to pull over the boat. With the roaring river behind him, he inspected the landscape before him. The trees had thinned out. They mostly consisted of pines. It created a sweet sap smell that barely hid the scent of salt fir wafting up from the mountains. The ground was rough and rocky. He was grateful for his thick boots. Looking at Sari, he was surprised her shoes still held up. She seemed dead on her feet. Corbin was tempted to point Sari in the correct direction so he could go home. He doubted she could make it on her own. I'll leave the boat here. If we hurry, perhaps we can get to the monastery in an hour or so. Corbin pulled the boat far away from the waterline. Hiding under some shrubbery, he thought it would be hidden enough. Sari adjusted her wind-blown hair. She could not think of a good lie. Besides, the area was scary enough in the daylight. When it gets dark, it would be terrifying. Instead of a lie, she agreed. That sounds great. You have no idea how grateful I am to you. Don't mention it. I just hope my sister and mother aren't worried. Do you not make it home often? They trust me. I always come home in the end. They began walking along the river. Corbin wondered if he would miss her defensive but curious report. Perhaps he would visit her. The mountains weren't that far away. Sari moved closer. Clearly she was nervous. He had to agree with her. Something felt off. Corbin couldn't put his finger on it. Slowly around the bend, he realized why. And that's the end of that. Come back next time with Chapter 6.